Hello you! Do you love love? I do. I'm a Libra with an anxious attachment style, so giving love and being loved is all that I really care about. You know what else I love? Love from the TV show You.
I won't say hello.
The first time I set my eyes on this delicious face, I was besmitten to smithereens. Her ears, a smile, a voice. She made her way straight to the top, to the list of famous women I am in love with. And in the TV show, her love language is clearly acts of service, which is mine as well. So she would probably have to murder my husband so we can be together, but she would do it for my own good, and I would forgive her so we can ride into a sunset full of foursomes and little cakes. The first 2 times that I watched the TV show, I didn't think about recreating any other outfit because I didn't sew, but now I do, and I finally have an opportunity to make something culturally relevant because the final season, season 5, is gonna be airing, or is airing at the time I released this video, you tell me. And I just knew that I had to go for this dress, first because it's beautiful, but also because when I looked at it, I thought, well, that looks doable. Was it?
I wouldn't say that.
Well, it took me 17 full days to complete, so you do the math.
You fucking cockroach. Cost a chunk of my rent.
So time had come to finally use the dress form that I had ordered in the middle of the night during an insomnia frenzy when I became obsessed with the idea of recreating a dress worn by Björk. That is completely out of my skill level, so I thought this project would be a good first try to learn how to drape, and I knew that I had to start with a mock-up given that I'd never made a fitted item before. So I decided to harvest the fabric from this pink hospital gown that I found in a charity shop because it had the same thickness and stiffness as the blue fabric that I got to make the actual gown. So here's the fabric I want to make the mock-up with, but I just realized that it actually stinks of mold. Ew. And there's no mold on it, but it doesn't smell very good, so I'm gonna have to wash it before because I can't work on something that stinks. Also, I have made this completely haphazardly, so please disregard the outfit continuity errors. I am familiar with the eat the frog concept, where you start with the hardest thing first, but I am more of a eat the dessert first kind of girl, so I just tend to leave the problems for later. So I thought I could just kind of wing it, but I quickly realized that I had no idea what I was doing and needed to get some ancient wisdom from YouTube. So of course I went to Mikara first, but she didn't exactly explain everything that I needed to learn. So I found myself some new besties who taught me how to make dots. And the first thing I learned was that in project sewing, a nipple is called an apex. And I thought that was pretty cool because before I didn't have an apex and now I have 2. And so when you do your dot, you don't do it all the way to the apex, you stop a little bit below. The other thing that I learned was that to iron curves properly, you should get a pressing hem. And when I first heard that, I thought, well, probably heard that wrong. So I went back to the video and then she said it again, a pressing hem. And I thought that was very funny because ham in French is jambon, and that's a word I really like. I find it really cute, and that's actually what I call my husband, my jambon.
I will see too.
And we have a neighbor called jambon, it's called Graham, but we call him jambon gris. So the word jambon is very present in my life, but still I decided not to get a pressing ham because, just for this one project. So instead I just rolled up a towel and it kind of worked okay. Were you paying attention to what I was doing whilst I was digressing around? If not, let's rewind so I can catch you up on how I made the top. After draping my dots, I drew the basic shape of the top on the dress form and cut out the pattern on the floor. It looked almost exactly something like this.
End of story.
Then I cut its mirror image for the other side of the chest, and then 2 extra pieces to match these for the lining. I sewed the dots in place on each individual piece and then ironed them on my makeshift ham. Then I paired each one to its lining and laid them flat on each other, right side in. I pinned the edges and sewed along both sides, effectively turning 4 pieces into 2. Then I turned them inside out, pressed the seams, cut out the waistband that I sewed on the bottom edge, sandwiching the seams. And finally tucked one side of the neck strap into its little body on the other side. Then I used the machine to close that up, and just like that, the mock-up was done. Alright, so I finished the mock-up. It's kind of cute, even though it's much more sexy than the vibe I was going for.
Oh, shut up, Dad.
Definitely gonna make a few changes, especially around here, just cover up and maybe try to be a bit less provocative
can't.
in the front. But yeah, I'm quite happy with it anyway.
Me too.
So the dress is a recreation of the Alice in Wonderland dress. As we all know, she wears a blue dress with a white apron on top. This version of the dress was created for the show by a designer called Danielle Launzel. She posted a few pictures of the construction of the dress on her Instagram, which I was very grateful for because the dress is not on screen for a very long time and you can't see it from different angles, so the pictures give me a much better understanding of how it was made. The first thing that I noticed was that the top of the apron was actually attached to the top of the dress, and that kind of glitched my brain because I have a problem with things that should be two different items merged into one. You know, like these jumpers that have like a piece of a shirt and like the bottom of the sleeves but no shirt inside. What's up with that?
What's up with that?
So I decided to maybe just make the apron separate and then a dress and then just wear them together, but then when I got the white mesh and I saw it on the blue fabric, I really loved how it looked, and I decided to just kind of steer away from the apron vibe and just merge the thing like completely together. The second thing that I decided to change was the length of the underskirt, because I just know that I'm gonna wear the dress more often if it's like a tiny dress. So I wanted to start with the top and then see how much fabric I had left for the skirt. But now that my mock-up fabric is drying outside, I decided I'm just gonna start on the skirt and hope for the best. I started by cutting the fabric into long strips for the first part of the skirt, which I then hemmed and pleated. So if you are an experienced sewist, you are probably thinking, oh my god, sound the alarm, because you are seeing me cutting the fabric in two different directions. I am aware that you're supposed to cut on the grain, but to be perfectly honest, I don't really understand what that means. And I know that given my level in sewing, which is currently entry, I should probably watch one of those like videos that are 10 beginners sewing mistakes. But that sounds clickbaity, and I don't like to be clickbaited. And you know, I probably know some of them, like the first one is probably don't put your finger through the sewing machine, which I have learned the hard way during my last video. Second one is probably don't put the iron face down on the carpet whilst it's hot. This one I learned when I was 19, when I moved to my first flat in London, and what and why I was ironing is a complete mystery to me. Where did I find the iron? That's another one, because it was definitely not part of the essentials that I brought with me from Paris on the overnight coach. I spent the 3 years that I lived in that flat worrying about losing my deposit because of that, but in the end it turned out to be the least of my worries. You see, at that time, I was trying to become a fashion photographer. I was following lots of cute girls on Instagram, and one of them was called Poppy Clark. And yeah, she had a cool style, an interesting face, she kept posting like vegan foods, and I developed a little bit of a parasocial crush on her. So imagine my surprise when one night I am going to a gig with my boyfriend and she walks up to me asking me for direction to the gig I'm going to. So, like, you know, if I had been a little bit more like Joe, I would have used the things that I learned about her online to craft my personality so she would like me. But I didn't think about that because I'm not that cunning, and also I'm autistic, so sometimes I can be very direct. And instead, I just said, oh my god, Poppy Clark, I follow you on Instagram and I love you. Which kind of freaked her out, understandably. But you know, then we went to the gig, we had a good time, and we decided to do some photo shoots together. So we did that, and during one of them, she told me that she was looking for a place to stay. And one of my housemates was going away and was looking for someone to sublet her room. So I was like, oh, you should come and live with me. I thought we were gonna become best friends like I was with my two housemates. My housemates, I'm gonna use like their little nickname at their request to talk about them. So there was Fourmi, which means ant, and Crevette, which means shrimp. My nickname was Fesse de bébé, which means baby bum, because I don't have a bum, and that used to make them laugh a lot. And anyway, you know, I loved living with these two girls. I still love them. And I didn't really think that I was bringing evil into the flat, but I did. Like, the first thing that I noticed was that first she was not vegan. She was not even vegetarian, which is, you know, whatever. But why would you lie about that online? If I was to lie about something, I would probably pick something that people actually like I would pretend to be a cat or something. So yeah, that was that. And then we found out that her favorite pastime was to actually have big arguments with her boyfriend. Like they would be yelling and like bashing the walls, storming out, so yeah, like the vibe was not like great. And then I had to move out because we were at the end of our lease and I found another place to stay, but to be able to afford my rent, I had to sublet my room. Therefore, living for me, all by herself with these two girls that, she didn't know, really. And there, like the relationship between Poppy and for me just got much worse. To the point that one day, me and Crevette were on a trip together and we got an email from Fourmi with like lots of photos of our flat, completely destroyed. Like Poppy had just come in and ripped the kitchen cabinets, like graffiti everywhere, smashed the doors, and like wrote some very unpolitically correct slurs on Fourmi's bedroom door. So, in the end, the burn mark on my carpet was the least of my worries. We ended up losing the full deposit and, I guess if I'd watched a video about sewing then, maybe I would have not done that. So I'm not going to go through the 8 other mistakes that I think are in those videos because otherwise I'm going to be talking for 6 hours and we don't want that, do we? So anyway, let's get back into the dress. As you can see, I made it using 2 long rectangles of fabric that I've pleated and attached to another rectangle to make it all in one piece. I shouldn't have done that because that created a lot of volume at the top, which is not what I wanted. What I should have done instead is a 2-tier circle skirt. The first like a half circle and second a full circle. It would have been much more flowy, especially given how stiff my fabric was. But I didn't realize that until much later. I found 4 meters of this lace in the charity shop and I decided to cut it in half so I would have enough length to go around both layers of the skirt and on both sides of the top. For the top layers of the skirt, I cut long strips of the tulle to match the length of the blue layers. Then I used the machine to sew the lace to save some time. Now I have 4 layers of the skirt to attach to the base. Then I made the underskirt. And I cut long strips of fabric and realized that I could use the lines on my floor to make straight lines as I cut. And I thought that was going to be the solution for my whole sewing career. I could make straight lines all the time. But then I realized that that would only work with fabric that is transparent. So I was a bit sad about that. But anyway, I made my strips and decided to start with the ruffling because that sounded fun. And it kind of was. So yeah, I just fed them through the machine whilst pushing along and creating little ruffles. Then I watched a video on how to make a circle skirt. But the girl lost me when she used the word radius. I didn't want to make anything radiusy, so I just put the fabric on the floor and I eyeballed it, hoping for the best, and it turned out pretty much perfect. So then I had to attach the ruffles to the skirt, and I was a bit overwhelmed with the amount of ruffles that I had, and my spacing was not like as beautiful like the ripples in water like theirs have, and it's got more of a like chaotic fairy on crack kind of vibe, and to be honest, I don't hate it. I mean, I don't even know how I feel about it. Then I ran out of thread and I had to wait for the next day to get some from the shop. I used this downtime to cuddle with my cat.
Did you and James ever do anything like this?
And then I was ready to start again.
Who wouldn't sell their soul for that?
I left the closing of the skirt to the last minute because I wasn't too sure how to handle it. And I ended up attaching like the blue and the mesh layers together. And I should have done it in a pointy line, but I did it in a straight line, which caused the fabric to like gather up, and now it kind of makes me look like a little muffin.
Something smart and complex.
For the waistband, I thought that I could attach both layers of the fabric together as I sandwiched my seams, but it was a real slippery fest and it was basically impossible to do, so I ended up attaching the blue and the white fabrics together first, and that made everything much easier. I considered putting another bow to close the skirt, but then I thought, what if I go to a party and then some guy just pulls on one of the straps and then my skirt falls off and I end up butt naked on the dance floor. The only thing I could think of to prevent such a nightmare to occur was to use hook and eye closure. Hook and eyes have been baffling even the smartest of men since the dawn of time. You see, the part of the brain that's responsible for the cognitive ability to comprehend and the motor skills to operate hook and eye. Men just naturally swallow it when they're born. It becomes stuck in their throat. Why is it called an Adam apple? No one knows, but I'm sure glad it exists. So for the top, I just kind of followed the pattern that I made for the mock-up. I decided to make the thing all in one piece so there wouldn't be a seam at the neck, even though that wouldn't have mattered a lot because it would have been covered with the mesh layer anyway. I also added a few extra inches to the length of the middle so I could ruche it with an elastic to give more flexibility and comfort. Then I added some grommets in the back. I wanted to put a ribbon inside to make it tight, and I tried making the ribbon myself, but the fabric was so stiff that I didn't manage to turn it inside out, and I ended up getting some ribbon from the shop. So I wanted to attach the lace by hand on the top because it would look nicer, and I wanted to do it on the train to work. But that morning I was a little bit late, so I kind of rushed the pinning, and then I did it, and I came back home to attach the second part, and then I realized that I had sewn the whole thing face down. So I had to undo all my stitches and start again, which ate up a lot of my time. So, when it came time to attach the top of the apron to the rest of the dress, I became stuck in a pit of despair for like 3 whole days because it appeared that I didn't leave enough length to do my original plan, which was to cover the waistband of the top with the white mesh and just connect it kind of like seamlessly to the skirt. My options now were to have like both waistband apparent, the waistband of the skirt and the waistband of the top. And then it was either I put them both with the mesh on top and then I have like this not sandwich, just like tower of waistbands. Or to keep the first waistband blue and then have the blue kind of break up the silhouette. But I was not happy with either options. I even asked my friends and family for their opinions and I got really mixed reviews.
It's cheap and tacky.
So, I decided at some point, okay, just do something. And when I did, I realized that I actually left enough length to do what I planned. So I was super glad about that. And yeah, I just went on to finishing the dress.